Oh yeah, right over Tate said thank you. Hello, Connecticut. So hi, I'm Lou. I started a company called BlinkBid. It's bidding and production software. Started about 8 years ago on a whim. And I essentially, I guess about 10 years, 12 years ago, had transitioned from photography to directing and doing some writing. But I wasn't making enough money as a director when I started out. But I needed someone to do some bidding for me because I was trying to hustle as a director. And there wasn't any software out there that seemed really easy that I could give like a production manager, like, oh, like go do this. And so I came up with an idea. I knew a guy who knew how to program a little something, and we put something together, cobbled it together, and got like 80 users. And then when it looked like maybe we could try to grow this into something a little bit more impressive, we had to switch the environment in which we made the product in. So I had to call all 80 users and tell them like, hey, we're coming up with some new stuff. It's gonna be better than it is, kind of janky right now. And by the way, none of your data is gonna port over to the new one. And I'm gonna charge you $20 to upgrade. And everybody's like, yeah, cool, right on. That's right on, except for one guy who yelled at me for like half an hour. It was really funny. So that's how that all started. But the reason the software started is because when I started directing, I saw how executive producers at production houses for TVC or TV commercials were making money, and not only was it the fees they were charging, but it was the management of the budget. And I've always been an advocate, and I know it's not always possible, but I've always been an advocate of bidding a job, like a fixed bid, and then trying to work the numbers in your favor as you're producing the job. And you know, sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't, but that's how that came about. And then the product started to grow, and then I started getting more enmeshed with the advertising industry and hearing both sides of how this industry worked, and then we just kept going. So this is my logo. And we are actually in all those countries, which is fun and interesting. So this is about what's happening with the photo industry. I've been doing this, I got started when I was 19 years old. And the industry, as you guys know, has all undergone a lot of changes. Susie Barabee, who's a good friend of mine, and she was a senior art buyer or art producer at Goodby Silverstein for like, I'm not allowed to say, but anyway, it's a long time. And we were having wine one night, and we talk a lot about this industry, and we talk about how the photographers are being treated and what's happening with the companies, what's happening with digital and social media and all that stuff. And we have long drawn out conversations. And we came up with an idea to sort of like maybe bring a little reality check of what's happening behind the curtain on the advertising industry side, or the advertising agency side, to present it to photographers. So we put this together, and the way we decided to do it was, in order to present how things are changing, was she was going to treat me like a photographer, in that she was going to give me a spec for a shoot that she was working on at the time that we were talking. And the client she was working for was top secret, and it was for a product that was top secret, but she said it's going to be good to try to emulate this to see how what I do in terms of bidding it, or not me, but my producer did in terms of bidding it, and what's happening in the real world, and we did it quite literally in parallel. And so it was kind of interesting how that came out. So she sent me a photo brief, and she sent it to me cold, no advance warning on anything. So like I said, exactly like I was trying to bid for this job. And the product is a wearable technology product, and it's like Fitbit or Apple Watch. And so this is where we started. The goal is to shoot a library shoot. Now, how many of you guys here are doing library shoots now? Yeah, a few people. So this is becoming increasingly popular, where companies are wanting you to create scenes and shoot a story within that scene, and then give them hundreds of pictures that they can just draw upon all during the year. The whole concept of photography being long-lasting is kind of gone, because it kind of gets burnt out, used quickly, burnt out quickly, and then it's kind of gone. So this is for a library shoot for a wearable device. It's a 3-day shoot, outdoor activities in which you would use this wearable device that's top secret. And they want to create the dynamic between the different people who are wearing this thing. And it's going to be, as you'll see in the different scenarios coming up, it's a hiking scene with a family. And I'll just give you guys a second to read that. And the most important thing that I had to pay attention to was the type of people that were going to be cast for this. And then there's an outdoor boot camp. Now, I've never done a boot camp. Has anybody done a boot camp here? And Nikki's doing CrossFit. Is that boot camp?
No,
it's not.
But similar.
So I've done writing for film and for TV a little bit, and I had never done a boot camp, and so what I did was sign up for a boot camp just to see what it was like. And I did this boot camp at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then the next day after the boot camp, I was freebasing Advil, as I was in so much pain, because I did it with like the 30-year-old crew that's like, oh, we're gonna do this at 6 a.m. and go down to Silicon Valley and go to work. And I was like, fuck this. Anyways, they all kicked my ass and it was awesome. But anyway, I got a good sense of what boot camp was like. And it was important for me because I needed to speak to how I was gonna see the shoot unfold. Unless I could actually feel it and sort of get a sense for it, I think it's hard to really write truly about it. And it's not, I'm not saying verisimilitude in order to like be like super artsy or auteur-like, but if you really want to pitch yourself, like you can say, hey, I did the boot camp, now I know what it's all about. I think that's a selling point, you know, especially when you're pitching to the client. And then the ballroom dance class, and this stood out to me because they were talking about same-sex couples here. And that's a sort of a clue that the client is maybe wanting to put same-sex couples in a situation that's mainstream. And so it's something to think about when you're casting. And it also told me, as I was going through this particular, putting this particular shoot together and the treatment together, that it's like you have to, the one thing that's really nice about library shoots is that you're creating a movie shot in still pictures, and so you can really let your mind go crazy. So you can really kind of go nuts and bring that to them. And you deliver that in the form of a treatment, which we'll talk about in a second. This is the photo usage. Unlimited use, unlimited media. This has become standard for the industry because there's no way to track anything in companies. From the photographer side, it sucks because we don't have any managed rights stuff anymore. But from the company side, essentially what has happened is there's no way to track where the images are going, and they don't want to leave themselves open for a lawsuit. And that's kind of how this has evolved. The real reality of it is that car companies tend to set the trends in the photo industry, and then it kind of trickles down. So I guess about 6 years ago, the car companies were asking for unlimited time, unlimited use. And sadly, what was happening is photographers that were pushing back against that were just removed from the bidding process, and nobody kind of knew until, it's like one of those weird things that nobody knows until everybody knows, and that's kind of how this evolved to where we are now. Susie asked me for an option 2, and that's essentially because she's talking to a client as I'm talking to her. I'm trying to get the job from her, and she is working for an agency that has a retainer, but she still has to get this thing approved. And the 2-year unlimited use is if option 1 doesn't work, it's like, well, we have this because the agency wants to get this thing in production because that's how they make their money. So that's why there's 2 versions of this. Does everybody know the history of usage licenses at all? Do you guys want this? This might be, yeah? Oh, okay, I'm getting some enthusiasm. Yes, please. In the 70s, mid to late 70s, photographers were basically working for day rates, and advertising had a huge boom, mid 70s to late 70s. And photographers were looking at all this money that the companies were making with their art and saying like, how about a little love from me? And then they were looking at Hollywood and seeing how people were getting residuals for art that they did, and said, this sounds like a good idea. And the way this came about was they technically owned the copyright. So therefore, they weren't really transferring ownership. If I write something in Hollywood, like a spec, now this is Fantasyland, this doesn't happen anymore, but if this was really late 80s and I wrote a spec script and it was good and it got picked up, the studio buys the rights to the spec script, and I become an employee of the studio. So that's how Hollywood works. Photography doesn't work like that. Because we own the copyright, there became some leverage for us to have managed usage rights. Then, as we got into the internet era, managed usage rights, because we don't have a union and we don't have anybody tracking this, like the Directors Guild or the Screen Actors Guild, there was no way to watch what was happening with our images, and that's why they kind of went away. And because we don't have a huge governing body with collective bargaining power, this is like the hard part of being independent contractors. It's like we don't have somebody advocating for us, but we couldn't have somebody advocating for us because then we violate laws. I can't remember. Antitrust laws. Thank you. Antitrust laws. So it's a weird double standard, or it's just a weird double-edged sword for us. So this is the talent usage for the shoot for Susie. She went a real people casting, which is also known as going to the street. And just interestingly enough, talent agencies where they are managing models and true talent, they are, hi, how are you? Sorry. I can start again. Where they're managing true talent are still very much behind the times in sort of usage, and that's become a weird, like, quagmire friction point for photographers to deal with. So my recommendation for people is, if you're going to be dealing with true talent, like managed talent at an agency, help with the casting, because you have to sort of execute your vision, but have the client talk to the talent agency so they can have that fight, because otherwise it's on you, and then your client's yelling at you for not getting unlimited use, and it gets real weird real fast. And nobody knows why the talent agencies aren't coming up, but it's going to have to change at some point. So, treatment. Does everybody know what a treatment is? No? Okay. A treatment is, okay, I'll tell you about a treatment that I wrote. But everybody know who the band Rush is? Rush? Okay, we all like rock and roll, right on. Yes, thank you. It's funny, the further I go from California to the east, the more awareness of rock and roll there is. I'm not really sure why that is, but I tried this in California, it's like, Rush? Is that like an app? It's an app. I don't have an app, right? Rush, right? Yeah, exactly, right? And then you get towards the east, like, yeah, Rush, Rush. So I was sitting down with a screenwriter named Craig Titley and a well-known actor named Jack, and we were all talking about how we loved Rush and the Sci-Fi Channel. Craig had something going on the Sci-Fi Channel, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did like this show that was like the Twilight Zone, but it was like based on the lyrics of a Rush song, and if you knew Rush, it was like, that was like the bonus, but if you didn't, because they had like these futuristic lyrics and mildly dystopian lyrics, it would be still cool and all this stuff. And so I said, wow, what a great idea. And my favorite song is this thing called Time Stands Still. And I said, oh, it's about this couple, and they have to find this like device, and then they freeze time so they can be together, and then like time passes them by, and they're like, oh, dude, write that. And so what I did was write something called a treatment, and it's a 2-page document that basically outlines my idea for this pilot, okay? And you kind of write in prose what it's about, but as you're writing, you're hitting beats. You're hitting, okay, this is definitely the first act, and this is the second act, and this is the third act, and this is how it all sort of comes together. So I wrote this thing, and it got sent off to the Sci-Fi Channel, and you know, then because it's Hollywood, it goes into development, which is just basically a big dark hole where nothing happens. But the interesting thing is I still own the rights to the treatment. But so what's happening is when I started directing commercials, they required the same thing. They required a treatment. Treatments are a little bit different in commercials, where you write a little bit, but you show some pictures, and it's your execution or your idea of the execution of the boards that have been sent to you. And the idea behind it is like Nadav Kandar, who's doing commercials, could see it in that sort of really dark, sort of mysterious, blurry way that he does his stuff, right? And I see things in much more of a natural light, like sort of like a Peter Lindbergh type of way. And so I write my execution of the commercial, he writes his, they get sent in along with the bid that the executive producer does, and you know, best person wins. So that's what a treatment is in commercials. And now it's moving into photography, where clients are doing library shoots. They want to see treatment of what it's like. So bringing it back to our scenario here, first of all, don't panic when you hear the word treatment, because it's, well, I'll show you. I write for a living, so when Susie asked me for treatment, I wrote. And you don't have to read this now, we'll have this online, but this is kind of an idea. This is my opening for the treatment. And you know, it's kind of like, and we do this, and we do that, it's gonna be really beautiful, and we're gonna Scarlett Johansson, and it's gonna be lovely. And then I talk about the different things. Now, the one inherent problem in writing a treatment, especially if you're like me and you wanna do these like great sort of like huge shots that kind of go on all day, is that if you write something that looks good on the page that you think is going to attract the attention of the client, which is going to get you the job, and you think that by the time we start shooting they will forget about it, no. It is the only thing that they will remember about what you wrote, the shot that is impossible for you to get given the time that you have. So that's just how that's going to go. So be careful when you write stuff. So this is what I wrote. And then I wrote this ballroom dancing thing. And if you'll notice, I have sort of a visual motif going on. Here I close on silhouettes, and then the wearable glows blue. So it's just kind of, we had this great day, and then we end, and then we have this like beautiful glowing thing in a silhouette. If you go to the ballroom dancing, I try to close on an overhead shot. We bring the lights down. We still see the shadows of the people dancing, or the silhouettes of the people dancing, and then you see the glowing product. And then in my Advil Halcyon adventure, same thing, because it's sort of middle of the day, we silhouette against a bright reflection off a building, glowing product, and that's why I put it together. So I sent that to Susie, and she laughed at me, and she was kind of like, "What the? You know, my God! Like this is like a lot of words. Like you're crazy. Like this is not how we do things now, Lou." And I'm, okay, Susie, whatever. So she told me that this is another way to do a treatment. A picture and bullet points. If you can go out and shoot your own picture with your iPhone, that's the bonus. It's probably recommended. So it just kind of shows the passion, but perfectly acceptable treatment. Just sort of bullet point your ideas. Same thing here. And then finally for our boot camp. And none of those people are me. I'm just going to put that out there right now, because they're all in really good shape. The irony of all of this, after I got lambasted by Susie for writing that big long thing, the guy who won the job, the big top secret project that she was on, won because he wrote a big long treatise like I did. And she goes, "I've never seen this happen before." I'm like, whatever. So it just goes to show you that the industry, in terms of expressing your creative vision of how to do something, there's no right answers, and there really never have been any right answers, but you must go for what you know. I mean, that's the best way that I can put it. Here's some treatment tips. When you're given a job like this and you have this library shoot and you're going to put together these scenarios, you're breaking the story. So you're seeing the story in your head start to finish. Really, really critical to understand that. Having a basic understanding of narrative and narrative arc, and I don't mean to go like super deep on that, but having a basic idea of what 3-act story structure is, because that will save you every single time. We start here, we have a beginning, we have a middle, and we have an end. I think Gene Wilder said that the way a movie works is you have a hero, you introduce him in his home, you take him out of his home, you put him up a tree, you set the tree on fire, and then you get him out of the tree, and that's a movie, essentially what it is now. Obviously very distilled down, but that sort of basic understanding of narrative structure is really, really important. Also, sell your execution. I'm not a particularly good studio photographer. I was self-taught, and I started shooting on the street, and as a result of that, I got really good at natural light. And so I never go and say, well, yeah, I'll go shoot all the studio stuff. If I shoot in the studio, I hire really clever assistants and just sort of tell them what to do, and then they tell me that they plug the pack into this, and the pack is a 03805Z, and I'm like, whatever, dude, light that bad boy and let's go. And then, but how many people here saw Skyfall? See, now this is where California beats you guys out. Everyone in California, yeah, I saw that movie. So if you look at that or any of David Fincher's movies, there's a distinct color palette. If you haven't seen Skyfall, I highly recommend it. It's a great James Bond movie, but the palette, when you do see this, or even if you look at a trailer for it, has a very distinct cyan and orange vibe going on, and everything's lit like that. That's a thing, that's a thing to sell. Instead of just doing straight pictures, like, yeah, if we can keep this sort of theme going for the hikers as being sort of like green and yellow and interesting and fun, and then, sell a palette for the whatever. It's something to call out to say that you just have this awareness of what's going on. Always play to your strength. Again, I'm not a studio person, so I always pitch myself as the location guy. I love shooting on location. Unless the money's right, then I will lie. Just to put that out there. So, to get an idea of 3-act story structure, so you can just sort of get like a basic understanding. I don't recommend screenwriting books at all because they all suck. However, this is a book that takes movies that we all have seen and it breaks it down to 3-act story structure. And I'm not talking about like this big tome that's like this thick. It's like a couple of visits to the toilet and you've got this thing read. And but he does a really good job of just giving you an understanding about how 3-act story structure works, and then you can see the movies that he's talking about, and then you can understand that it's like Finding Nemo, shockingly, has one of the best story structures in the industry that I've ever seen. I mean, and it's sort of like legend for its story structure because it's so perfect, And I'm not saying perfect is good all the time, but for Finding Nemo, it's great. It has all the elements that you ever need to know about like how story works in Finding Nemo. And my ex-girlfriend who had a kid loved this movie, and I've seen it 298 times. So, and still Pixar has not given me a single dime, but whatever. So highly recommend getting this book. It's like $15 or $10 on Amazon, and it'll take you 2 hours to read. And it'll just kind of open your mind to what that's about. And that'll help you write your treatments. This probably isn't for this crowd, but I'll just kind of whip through it really fast because you guys are all experienced. Just things to think about before you get on the phone for your creative talk. I think you guys probably are doing this. Research your client in California. Like, do they get venture capital money? How rich are they? How poor are they? Like, what's happening with them? Is the agency have maybe a CEO that has the same name as another person working at the company? Like, there's all kinds of little things that you gotta kind of check out. Be cool, be yourself. Again, you guys all know how to take creative calls, so I'm kind of going over familiar ground for you, but this is more for the kids. And then don't exaggerate your experience, obviously. People who are hiring you know exactly who you are. So the days of saying that I saw George Clooney walking across the street, so therefore I know George Clooney, those are done. This is, again, probably not for this crowd, but I'll just kind of run through it. Things to ask the producer or the client, like, what's your budget look like? Always ask, see if you get an answer. Sometimes you get an answer, sometimes you don't, who knows? Where are the images going to be used? How long do you need to use them for? Again, this is probably old news for this crowd, but, and then for a library shoot, do you need to have access to all the images? What that means is, if you're shooting a library shoot, are you handing over a hard drive with everything on it, the good, the bad, and the ugly? Or is there an expectation that you're going to do a quick rough edit on it and take out all the missed focus stuff? Things like that. So what that informs you of is, are you going to have time to do an edit, and are you going to get paid for it, that sort of thing. This is talent has become really complicated lately because, again, the talent agencies aren't quite on board with giving up all the rights to everything. Most agencies that are booking real talent, it's one-time fee and it's gone, and it's not a problem, but true talent agencies are still a bit of a quagmire trying to get that thing sorted out. So what's the talent usage? Is there exclusivity for the category? What that means is, if you hire a talent and they're doing a wearable, is there now an embargo on that talent from doing like the Apple Watch now? So they did this top secret product, and then Apple wants to hire this talent, and they can't do it because so that's going to be more money, obviously, for the exclusivity. And what does exclusivity mean? Is it watch? Is it computer? Is it phone and watch? Is it so? It's that sort of thing. So you missed all the good stuff. Like this is all. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, right. Deliverables and post-production. What are you delivering to the client? Are you delivering a hard drive? Are you putting stuff online? That sort of thing. Who's doing the digital processing and color correction? Who's doing the retouching? And what's the timing on the deliverables? 24, 48, 72 week after the job wraps. When you start to put together the bid, if you're going to produce this yourself, or you're going to bid it yourself, my recommendation is to sit down, get focused, and just think about the wrap party is all I'm saying. This is where we want to end up after the shoot is over. And this is, save money in the budget for this. Every time I put this up on the screen, I look at this and I so want to be there for just one night. It will probably be my last night on Earth because that just looks brutal, but damn. This is what you really need to think about when you're putting together a bid. What's that? Yeah. This is the way, so I got a producer to help me with this bid. Actually, help is kind of a lie, he did it. This is the way producers think. Everything goes through this filter for producers. How many shots, how many days, how many locations, how many hits? That's all they care about. Any special expensive requirements. Do we need a water truck? Is there going to be a wet scene? Do we need special effects makeup? Do we need special effects? Do we need that, or practical effects, I should say. Those are effects that happen on the set. So this is when you start going into trying to put together your bid, this is how you should be thinking. You should be thinking in a very distilled perspective. When I produced my first shoots that were bigger, what I found worked really, really effectively is as soon as I got the job, I was so pumped up that I got the job that like all of a sudden my brain went crazy with all the great ideas, and you could see the scenes I could see the scenes in my head, and I don't know why I did this, but it worked effectively, is I just started writing stuff down. Because as soon as you start thinking formally about the job, like, okay, I'm in the car and I've got these great ideas, I start writing them down. As soon as you start sitting down to like, okay, I gotta start pricing this thing out, all those great ideas are somehow like gone. It's just very bizarre. So as soon as you get the job and you see how this thing's gonna come together, just write stuff down randomly on a piece of paper, doesn't mind. And then I recommend getting a glass of wine and doing it again. As you write your ideas down, you go back to the producer's list again. How many shots, how many days, how many locations. This means that like if you're seeing a scene in Barbados and this thing needs to shoot in Connecticut, you're probably not going to get to Barbados, so maybe that's a bad idea. This is like the weird stuff that I still can't get my head around, but it's really important. In TV commercials, there's an established standard of 33% before pre-production, 33% before production, actual shooting days, and 33% on delivery. And it doesn't vary. And why the photo industry doesn't have this, I have no idea. We have stuff like, it could be 50% of production cost, or it could be 50% of the entire bid, including the fees, or it could be 25% of the entire bid, including fee. If it's a partly cloudy Thursday, it may be 22.5%. It's just, it gets crazy, and none of it makes any sense, and none of it benefits the photographers. But find out what kind of money you're going to get up front and how that's going to work, and if you can push for more, especially if it's a complicated shoot. What's the cancellation policy? This is pretty straightforward stuff. If you guys cancel 72 hours, 24, 48, how's that all going to work? What's the accounting process? Susie brought me this reality. Car companies, literally, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like the second Thursday of the month that's 180 days after the shoot is when you get your final check. It's some weird, random formula, and I don't know what it is. The idea is when you're getting your final money, because if you're going out of pocket in this, or you're pulling from a credit line to make the shoot happen, like when's that going to be paid back? Should you be building some interest in? There's a lot of stuff to consider. So find out when that final check's going to come. It's not a bad question to ask, and nobody gets upset by it because everybody knows this industry is a whack. This is probably not for you guys, but just don't be afraid to ask for help. How fast do you want to get the bid done? Susie said, a day or two is good depending on the complexity of the bid. If it's a really complex bid and the art producers know it and it comes in 3 days later, it's fine. If you're getting into 4 days, then you're probably not right for the job. Again, not for you because it's an experienced crowd. Don't compromise it or fake it. Our producers are really smart. They have some tolerance for marking things up. They know that you need to create some cushion in there. They're not going to call that out to their client. If you try to go too crazy on any one thing, then it's going to get pushed back. Just have a balance. And don't be afraid to ask. Susie said she's always concerned when she feels a photographer struggling and they don't ask for some help. She said it's not a us versus them type of thing when you're dealing with the art producer. It's just about clear communication. So this is what our first budget came in at. Philip Pavliger, who's a great producer, who's been in this industry. He used to be on the agency side, and then he came over to our side. This is our first pass for these scenarios, and we thought it was all on the high side. Philip had bid it as if we were based in San Francisco, where I am, and we were going to go shoot in Los Angeles for the locations. And so that meant flying a lot of crew around. So we did a revised budget, and we did it for only flying principal people, and then everybody else got hired as a local. And this is the budget that we submitted. This is what we got back from Susie as a result. So she said, it looks good. Will this cover 2 rounds of casting? We didn't consider that there was going to be 2 rounds of casting, so this is something that she wanted in the bid. We didn't call out the talent fee, the 20% talent fee in the bid. She wanted us to call that out. If there's going to be, I don't think you have this in Connecticut. If you have kids on the set, do you have to have a teacher on the set here? No?
Not for stills.
Not for stills? Yeah, so California's, you have to have a studio here. Here you can exploit the shit out of kids, which I think is awesome. So, like I said, rock and roll and exploiting kids. You guys got it. And then, are you guys having to deal with P&W, payroll and welfare, or pension and welfare? So this is coming, so you should have a little bit of awareness of it. Pension and welfare is basically workman's comp for crew and talent. Talent agencies should, or the responsibility is on them to handle P&W, so you don't usually have to worry about that, but it has to be called out in the bid as an expense. It's usually 23%. If you're using crew, they're going to need P&W, and the way you do that is you hire a payroll company, and they'll take care of it. There's Extreme Reach, which she calls out here, but there's also Talent Partners. There's a bunch of payroll companies that are out there, and they take care of all that for you. If you're shooting on the West Coast and you're in Los Angeles and you hire anybody who's a union person, that number goes up to 32% for P&W, because then you have to also cover the union fees. So just something to be clear about. The line items, if you just say includes P&W, people understand why it's, you have a crew member at, 3 days at $1,000, and it's, 3,000 plus 33% or 23%, whatever that is. We didn't have any motorhomes. We thought everybody should just get naked on the street. That wasn't probably a great idea. And then she wanted more props, more in the prop budget for us. I'm sure you guys all know the difference between bid and estimate. Estimate is we're going to shoot it for this, and at the end of the shoot, we're going to submit a book with all our receipts and our actual expenses in it, and that's what the final invoice is going to be based on. If you shoot a bid, I'm going to shoot this for $100,000. We will deliver what we agreed upon for $100,000, and then if you bring it in under budget, that's more profit to you. In TV commercial land, when I was working, I had to deal with the production company that represented me. I got a fee for being a director, and then there was something called profit sharing. So if the job came in under, and so there's profit, extra profit, just in the type production of the job, I got something like 30%. This is also something to consider as the library shoots come to fore. I shot something. Do you guys remember what AOL was? America Online. Totally irrelevant now, but back in the day, back when AOL was relevant, I was asked to come in. They were supposed to do exactly this, like this library shoot thing for all these scenarios for all these people that they're putting in some game online or something like that. They hired a photographer. They shot it in a traditional way, and they ripped through a third of the budget in like 2 days, and they were still 1,000 shots shy. And so they had to fire the photographer. Somebody knew somebody who knew me, asked me to come in, and I said, that sounds like a nightmare, there's no way. I said, well, just take the meeting. So a friend of mine named Emily Barclay, who's an amazing producer, and I went and took the meeting, and they said, well, we can do this. And I said, listen, how much money do you have in the budget just for the photography? Like, just give me that number. Well, we can't give you that number. I said, well, then we can't do this. This is not gonna, like, I'm sorry. And actually, this wasn't me talking, this is Emily. I pretending like I'm like super clever, and no, she was the clever one. So I just want to put that out. But so she said, we're not going to do this. And so we said, okay, well, thanks for the time. We walked around the corner, and I started walking towards the car, and Emily's like, let's go to lunch. And so we went and sat down at lunch. She goes, they're going to call within the hour. I'm like, okay, super important producer person, whatever. So 45 minutes later, they called, and they asked us, if we could come back in the next day. I said, well, we just happened to be at lunch around the corner. So we went back up there. It's like, well, we'll give you the number that we have for the entire photo shoot. And I said, great, just give me all that money, we'll produce it. And they said, I understand that, but we don't see how you're going to be able to make this happen for the money that we have left. And I said, well, we're not going to tell you until you give us the money. So it was like this weird standoff for a second, but they were desperate. And so it's like, sign here. And then they said, okay, this is what we got. And they said, okay, what's your big secret? How are we going to do this? I said, well, we're going to go to Loyola Marymount University. It's summertime there. And they have a super friendly film department, like film location stuff. And the majority of scenarios that you have, in fact, 90% of the scenarios that you have, can all be shot on the college campus because they have all these different spots around the campus that all look like these different places that you want to capture. And then we only have one company move after that. And they're kind of like, and so we did it. And then I told Emily, I said, like, we'll do a 60-40 split. You can have the 60%, I'll take the 40% on anything that we come under, aside, which is above and beyond on top of our fees. So all the people that Emily had been working with for the last 10 years, this was the shoot she called in the favor. It's like, I've got a really low budget thing, and I need some low budget stuff from you because I did all that stuff for you in the past, and And it was, it's one of those stories that you have to tell over and over again because it never happens again, and it was a great day. So that's what's happened. It's just ironic now that was 15 years ago, and this is what's happening with library shoots now. When you're putting your bid together, be clever, be smart, say, I've got a really good idea how to keep this contained. So you want to avoid as many company moves as possible. Company moves are expensive, and you lose people, and that sort of thing.
Quick question. If you happen to go over budget, which none of us ever do.
Yeah, no, because that never happens.
In that instance, on a bid, would you have to eat that cost?
Yes, you do. Okay. So that's the difference. It's a great question.
Versus keeping the
yeah.
budget,
So when you're in an estimate situation, if you start going over, you can apply for overages.
Sure.
Have the client sign off on it, but when you bid it, the client doesn't care what you do. Right. They just know that they're contracted for these deliverables.
Right. Unless they start making changes on the fly.
Well, changes, yeah, that's different, okay. But that's sort of an understood thing. But yeah, no, if you
sometimes happens.
Yeah, it never happens. Well, clients are so easy to work with. So yeah, so that's what that is. If you okay. blow, and I did that once, and it cost me, I don't know, like 10, like all my fees disappeared. So it was a really good shoot and a great wrap dinner. So this is what our final budget was after we crunched. All right, Philip crunched the numbers. I just sort of bought him drinks. And
how much? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How much was that for photography?
I don't know off the top of my head. I should know, but we have a URL that I'll show you at the end that has actually all the bids, all the notes, everything, and the final numbers, and the broken out bid for you, and you can see it online. So right after this, I'll put that up, then you can go check it out. But I don't remember what the photography, I'm sorry. I should know this, but I forgot because I didn't actually shoot it or make the money on it. So this is our final budget that we submitted, and this is what their budget was. So we came in within very, very, very close amount. So that's a good producer for you. A lot of people, and this may be not be for this crowd, but a lot of people are asking me how to go find work because, again, this is for a younger crew, but a lot of the frustration that I'm hearing from people who are in their late 20s and early 30s and early 20s is like, I just can't find the work, and I'm posting on Facebook every single day. And I said, well, it doesn't really work like that. I said, well, everything else is wrapped around social media. I said, it's just like this much of a bigger picture. What I have found for myself, and if I take myself out of the equation, what I found in talking to our producers that are hiring people is they will occasionally find somebody on Instagram that they like and they'll contact them. That's definitely a component of it. Their expectation is that you have an Instagram feed that has, it's for work. They would like to see your work and not you and your puppy and then some work and then you and your puppy and then some work. Anything with a cat though is okay. But if you can find ways to meet people, get any sort of FaceTime, just so they have some sort of real life contact, it's always helpful. Hollywood is built on this paradigm. I mean, it's incredible. People that I met at a party here that I was kind to or just had a good laugh with, I got looked up by them, years, even a decade later, because we had a good time here. If you're running a great set and everybody has a good time, and by the way, not clients so much, but agency people understand that sets are chaos and stuff goes wrong. It's how you recover from the shit that goes wrong that sort of differentiates yourself. That's another thing to put out, because if people have fun on your set and it's between you and another photographer, well, I had a great time on Lou's set, so we'll go there, and this, again, you're probably more experienced for this little tidbit, but one of the things I found in Hollywood was I started directing a commercial. I did a commercial, it went really, really well. And then my girlfriend broke up with me, and I met with the art producer who had booked me for the commercial. And I thought, hey, let's go have a glass of wine, and I can tell you about how sad I am. And she was so sweet. She listened to every single word right before she went to the office and found another director. So yeah, it's just, nobody really cares about your burning on the inside. Keep it to yourself. And then again, this isn't for you, but this is just for the kids that follow up if you don't hear back, and you might not hear back ever, but just kind of follow up every once in a while. This is, I think, important for everybody. Expand your knowledge as much as humanly possible. Travel as often as you can and watch epic movies. When I say travel, you don't have to actually get on a plane someplace. Just drive or walk someplace that you've never been. And I've got still dozens of places just in my area that I've never been to, and I think that I know it because I grew up in this area and I really know it. And then you find these little gems of areas that's wow, that's cool. And Connecticut is beautiful. Just go new places, and it's for no other reason except just to get inspired, because I don't know what it is about us, and I think it's just because we're all crazy, that we see something new and interesting and it just spins stuff in our head. All of a sudden it's yeah, and then you drive home, you listen to some great music, and you've got all these ideas flowing in your head, and it just keeps things fresh. That's just my only advice, and it's a good way to go. And again, this probably isn't for you, but as photography is moving more into a direction of longer form narrative as opposed to single frame narrative, watch what some of the really great classic movies do and how they unfold. Watch them once just for the entertainment value of it, and then go back and watch them again and just see how it came together. David Fincher does a lot of really interesting things, narratively speaking, but also visually speaking. If you watch David Fincher's stuff, you will see as an actor looks up, the camera moves with the actor. And he does a lot of really small, tiny micro moves, which I never really noticed until somebody pointed it out to me. And it's kind of oh, that's why it looks like a Fincher movie. You know what I'm saying? So there's just a lot of stuff to find in there. And it's sort of like looking at your friend's work, oh, that's awesome, dude. And then you get inspired, everybody gets inspired. So this is something I just like to recommend to people, because I think sometimes it gets forgotten. I know it was forgotten for me for a couple of years. Most important thing in the contemporary environment right now is absolutely being super clear. There's so many people at the agency and the client level that are involved in email threads, these seemingly endless emails, and everybody's copied. Why did you copy my mother on this? Well, I thought she should know. It's just weird. So what I have found in every sort of dealing I've ever had is super brief, practically bullet pointed emails, because nobody's reading anything long. they read like the first 5 sentences of a paragraph, and then they kind of scan the rest, pick up a few things, and everything gets misinterpreted. Super terse, super clear is all you need. And if you think that you're going to be offending somebody, nobody's going to be offended. Just like, yeah, we're going to shoot here, boom, done. It's just, they just want to get the information, absorb it. Especially as I think all of us in this room are dealing with much younger people in the agency world. They don't know anything beyond 6 sentences. I don't know what happened, but it's just weird. And so, and even in my software product, we put these windows like, please do not continue. If you do, your software will blow up, all your data will be gone, and your dog will suffer seizures. And they keep clicking yes anyway. It's just insane. So nobody's reading anything, so just be as brief as possible with everything. Now you can ask me anything about anything at all. Questions? Yeah? One little question. Camera's rolling. One question? Yes, thank you. God.
That was a pretty big project that you just described. I mean, on a local end, working within the state,
Right.
state of Connecticut. My experience has always been where we're not involved in getting talent, and a lot of times they just want to use employees, and they're not professionals. But we still have to compete, which I think we all like to hope that people hire us because they liked our photography.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going, and it's like one of those things where I wanted to show sort of like a big project, because everything that's here can be distilled down to what you're doing, and the idea, or it's my hope that the idea is that it will inspire like a different way to maybe pitch up or upsell or something, just to show kind of what's happening in the bigger markets.
So
Yeah.
you're illustrating the library shoot as a trend.
Yes.
And so we're all used to sort of shooting perhaps the money shot and a couple other details around the edges, and we've been pitching to that for quite a while.
Yeah.
Now we're pitching library shoots, and it's, do we double our prices? Do we quadruple? Where's
That's a good question. So a lot of what I talked to Susie about in terms of how people are getting paid, it's basically a day rate, a nice day rate, plus usage. You know what I mean? So she was talking between $12 to $2,000 per day for shooting, and then usage on top of it. And the usage can then be sort of separated out, because it's not ever going to come back. The usage is never going to continue. It's sort of like try to make as much money as you can on the usage. However, the usage is fluid, and it's always open for discussion. As soon as you establish a day rate that seems to make sense to people, then it's just about using the rights, and that's how she said a lot of negotiations. Yeah, go ahead.
So follow up.
Yeah.
And I actually use the BlinkBid software, otherwise I wouldn't even know about this.
Right.
Well, I would, but through all the
Yeah.
resources we have, and particularly when you're working with a library, and this is say an architect who they love everything they did. So I've got sort of my post-production, and then do you also have per shot, and how per shot?
Is post-production being done per shot? Yeah, but it's sort of like, I'm not sure what the number is, because I haven't had exposure to it, and if I said anything, it would be misleading. But it's definitely like, if you have 1,000 shots, it's sort of, or say you have 500 shots, if you can do post-production on it, it's going to be, maybe sub-dollar per image type of thing, and sort of an aggregate. And
Was that part of how it got to 195,000, or?
yeah, there was definitely some post-production there. I could probably find the bit. After we're done with the questions, I'll put the bit up there. You guys can take a look at it.
And I totally missed the number you just said when you were talking about the day rate. I didn't.
Oh, it's like 12 and 2,000 a day, depending. If you've shot, somebody famous, you could probably charge more. So yes, sir.
Is there, and when it comes to usage, so, where, for me, that's a territory that I'm really very unfamiliar with. Is there a standard? For so that when you're putting in for your costs in your bid, on what the different rates would be
For the usage?
Yeah.
There's not a standard, because again, that speaks to the antitrust thing. That means we all collude. It's kind of when I when we can go find this bid, you can see what the usage was on this, and then you can sort of like distill it down from there and sort of like adapt it to your market. So that's the best I can offer. Yes, ma'am.
I'm finding clients now, they want all the rights, all media
Yes.
in perpetuity, because once it gets out there, they can't police whether their client
Yes.
puts it on social media or and then someone else steals it from
Right.
there and puts it someplace else.
Right.
So when you're bidding, should you start factoring in, aside from your shoot time and processing time?
That's what the usage is, basically.
Right, but I mean, how, if you were really gonna price out in perpetuity and all media, you'd price yourself out of job after job.
You have to take a hit on that. Like the old days of pricing photography in terms of like having a larger value on the images, you have to now look at all the images as sort of an aggregate property in of itself. So like 500 images are now one thing, and we're pricing this one thing. And that's how you have to start thinking about it. And the whole conversation of whether this is going to be limited use is kind of gone, because you have two factors. A, exactly as you described, nobody can manage it, nobody can watch it, and everybody's concerned about it showing up someplace and then being sued. So that's on the corporate side. B, the next generation of people that are hiring you have no concept that individual shots cost money, that it's completely, they've never seen it, and so they have no idea what that is. So if you try to explain it to them, they will just like glaze over and check it on their Facebook again. So, yeah.
Not to interrupt, but the issue, I think, is when basically people want that big usage for the single usage price.
Right.
So they know about that part.
Right. It's just, it's yeah, exactly. I mean, it's.
No, I want to know if, when we're figuring out what we should charge, and that's the usage that they're asking for.
Yeah.
And given what you just said, I mean, do we even put in that it includes this usage so they feel like they're getting a value?
No, absolutely. No,
and charge a little more for that?
Absolutely, absolutely. The usage includes everything. Just you have to put that in your usage license, because you're not transferring copyright. You're just giving away the usage of it. But you need to absolutely call that out and say, look, this is the price for this usage, and you get to use it for whatever you want. You know, I think one of the magic phrases is like, we're going to shoot this thing, and then you can run with it, and you don't have to talk to me anymore, you know, until we shoot this again. So that's kind of the deal. Yes, sir.
You also have to take into account the lifetime of the images.
True.
You know, different scenarios will have a longer lifetime than others.
Yeah, I shot a picture that lasted almost 15 minutes once. It was pretty cool. It ended up on Snapchat and gone. It was a phantom. Yes, sir.
I would offer that even with for perpetuity and unlimited use, that it's for that given client and it's not.
Yes. So interestingly enough, what I've heard from Susie and most people is third-party usage is actually being highly respected for the most part, because that is a clear violation and nobody wants to get into that zone. And for whatever reason, people seem to have an inherent concept of that. So there's like this weird thing, it's like, well, these are my images that I bought, and if I'm not sure I can give it to this person. And then I think also companies are kind of using this as leverage. Well, if we're going to give you some of our advertising images, we have to go talk to the photographer. It's going to cost some money, so we're going to need to have our co-marketing deal, like Calvin Klein, and when they brand a jacket or something like that, this is going to be part of our negotiation now. So that's why I think there's an awareness of it, like those factors are involved. So, yes, sir.
I love your ideas of giving the treatment so it shows investment in the bid, and you're thinking, one step ahead.
Right.
Helping problem solve for the client. One of my concerns is, what are the types of questions you can ask? Like, how many photographers are you asking for bids? Or how much do you want to work with me? Rather than saying that exact question. Where am I in
You
this
could
process?
just do something really sweet, like, how much do you really like me? Or, just.
Well, I don't want to spend 2 days on a bid if they're if they're throwing this out there to 10 photographers.
I understand where you're coming from, but just spend the 2 days on the bid, because that's just kind of how it's working. And if the time spent on the bid is costing you more money than you could be making otherwise, then hire somebody to bid it for you. So that's the name of the game. I've literally 3 projects in Hollywood that are in development hell, and I spent more than a couple days on them. And it's just I chose to roll those dice, and I wrote some great work, and I was lauded for my work. And it's like, I read it, I loved it, and it's gonna sit on this shelf right here. And it probably is still there, unless the cleaning person took it home and read it or something, who knows? Yes, ma'am.
And he brings up a good point about the treatment. So if you, and you said this earlier too, if you're giving people your ideas, they can go out, let's say he gives them a great idea on the treatment, but then
Great.
they find someone cheaper.
Right,
And they
great.
say, "We want you to
It's a
do
great
this."
question. I'm just gonna tell you this right now, just to bring this reality. Ideas are not copyrightable, trademarkable, or anything. That's the world. What you say is a true thing. It doesn't happen all that often, but it is a weird thing within the photo industry that seems to get talked about on forums all the time by people who aren't actually shooting. But it's a mindset, and it comes from, I think, and this is total opinion, that we have people who are more in the amateur realm of photography, and they're watching TV, and they say, like, it's really funny, this whole Game of Thrones thing, I thought about that one day. I was, sitting in my bathtub, and I thought, like, yeah, boobs and beheadings, I'm in. And so and you know what I mean? Everybody who's seen a movie has had the idea for that movie at some point, but it doesn't matter until you execute and turn it into something tangible that can be copyrighted. So it doesn't matter, yes. How valuable are the ideas? Well, think of it this way. If you came up with this idea, you can do it again, and so the value is actually in your own brain. So there you go.
But is the treatment itself copyrightable? Because it's
The treatment itself is copyrightable. I wouldn't recommend doing anything with it because it's for a photo shoot. If you have something that you write for TV or television, I would recommend registering with the Writers Guild. It doesn't do anything. It costs $20, but it just, I don't know. I register my stuff. I spend the $20, and I just look at it as sort of a celebration of completing it and donating money to the WGA, whatever. It's not, I don't think it would stand up in court or anything else like that. And believe me, every time a movie comes out, there's always somebody who thought of that movie, and there's always a lawsuit, especially if the movie goes large. Like, name, whose favorite big movie, anything, besides James Bond? Oh, yeah.
In your treatment of how you described all the different scenarios,
Yes.
if we're given that treatment that we're sort of following it as a guide,
Yeah.
how does that affect usage if we're being hired to, who owns the idea?
So the treatment is typically supposed to come for you. If the client asks for treatment, they're going to ask you to write it, and you're going to write a long form like I did because I'm a wordy dude, or you're going to do that little thing. But in terms of the idea, there's no ownership of the ideas because they can't be owned. It's just, and it's not really a true story. You're describing a set of pictures that happens. If it was to evolve into a true story, then that's something that could be owned. So, yes.
When working with like high-profile talent, like models or celebrities, do you ever, this isn't really about pricing, but do you ever run into situations where they demand or request approval over what images get used? And how do you handle that?
You mean like always?
Yeah, and even like approving retouching, things
Yeah,
like that. 'Cause
so high-profile celebrities or any profile celebrities have a creature that lingers around them called a publicist.
Yeah.
And this publicist will have requirements of the shoot.
Basically editorial approval.
It's sort of editorial approval. So it's politics. It is politics. The thing is like, dude, I'm seeing it like this. And it's like, well, Brad doesn't want it out like that, man. So we got to do this. We got to do this. And so you just got to kind of run with it. I got hired to shoot Nicolas Cage for a magazine thing, and it was like, we've got $900. Like, cool, I can make this work. I'm not going to eat, but Nick Cage is going to be in my portfolio. And then Nick Cage's publicist called and said he's going to need a motorhome. I said, but we got a studio and he's got a private room. Nah, Nick likes to be in the motorhome outside with air conditioning and his own thing. And so my $900 budget suddenly went to like $2,200. And then it was like, do I eat that to have Nick Cage in my book? This is, again, but yeah, publicists are very interesting people, and it's politics. Get to know the publicist, make friends with them. So.
Because I personally don't have an issue with that unless you're up against a deadline. and then it's like, oh, we can't run this unless we get so-and-so's approval.
But
So you
this
have
is,
to
this
kinda
is,
write
yeah,
it in the
this is the
contract,
business we're in.
right?
This is what, yeah, this is,
Pretty much,
this
right?
is what we do
Yeah.
instead of sitting in a cubicle, so,
Yeah.
so we sit in front of a screen, right? Whatever. Yes, ma'am.
But in that case, how come you couldn't have gone back to the magazine and said that,
Because it was, they were like, this is how much money we have, take it or leave it.
and if they found someone else, that person still would have been faced with that demand of the motorhome?
So at that point, it's like, am I going to spend? So I had 900 to work with, and it was going to be about 2,000. Is it worth $1,100 to have Nicolas Cage in my book?
And was
That
it?
becomes a marketing expense for me. Was it worth it? I don't know. To my 30-year-old self, yeah. To my 50-year-old self, fuck no. You know, $1,100 is a trip to Europe where I take my girlfriend and she's happy all the time. And so, yeah, no. It really depends. I mean, you know, when you're trying to come up through the ranks, it's any little bit helps, and it's where you're willing to take your losses. It's, you know, it's again, marketing decision. So, anybody else? Cool. Let me see if there's any other slides that are cool. Oh, this is the thing. Why is that thing there? That's annoying.
One quick question, the producer's notes, you had a thing, how many heads?
Yeah.
Is that talent, is that crew, is that every head?
No, it's sorry, talent heads. Yeah. How many people are going to be in the shot? Type of thing. Oh wait, no, it actually does include crew. Sorry, let me go back to that. Let me see that.
Yeah,
for a
I
second.
wasn't sure if that related to like hiring talent or versus expenses of feeding people and whatnot.
How many shots? How many days? How many heads? Yeah, no, it is. It's everybody who's on the set. How many? Yeah, that Philip said, like, I just care about how many people. How many people do I have to feed?
Right, okay.
So that's what that is.
Yeah,
So
okay.
great question. Sorry, yes.
After you talk to a client on the phone, at the end of the conversation, you're saying, you know, what is your budget for the shoot? And
So is this the creative call or the first call?
this is the
Because
first call.
the first call.
First
So
call.
I always start like, so what kind of money do you have to work with? There was a, did you guys see Birdman, that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jimmy Scotchtopole, who was one of the producers on that, used to be Tony Scott's producer, and he brought me in to shoot pictures for Enemy of the State. And I got to hang around the office because nothing happens forever until it happens in movie making. I mean, it's crazy. But watching him operate, now this is absolutely, I saw this happen right in front of me. They were working on I was shooting something for The Fan. It was a movie that didn't do so good about this obsessive player, and it was Robert De Niro was like the, remember you guys see this?
Yeah.
And so I shot the baseball card, right? And so I'm sitting in the office watching Jimmy work, and he has to book, at the time it was Candlestick Park, where the San Francisco Giants play, right? And he calls up the guy who runs the park, and he needs to rent the entire park. Like, Candlestick Park, it's a stadium, and I'm going to rent it for this movie. And he's still on a budget. So he calls up the guy, and he just says, like, what is it going to cost me to rent this thing? I can't rent. That's not going to happen. Like, I'll tell you what, why don't you think about it? I'm going to call you. Wait. I know where you're coming from. But it's just like, he was just so bold and straightforward. I would have been like colon clenching, like, I can use Candlestick Park. That's awesome. I don't care how much it costs. You know, it's really funny. But he's balancing that type of stuff where he's just being bold and asking straight up, like, whatever. I saw that happen. And every conversation I had after that was like, so what kind of budget do you have to work with on this? And nobody flinched, not once. Not even a little bit.
Now, the second part of my question
Yeah.
is when they actually give their number, is that their 100% number or is that their 75%?
So this is how that goes, right? So like, you talk, Adam, it's like, okay, I'm going to shoot for you, Adam. I'm going to shoot like the great picture of you on your bike, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be in California, and and I go to you, and it's like, you know, Adam, what kind of money you got for this shot?
$400.
You have $400. It's like, Adam, I love you, and I love your talent. I like the way you look on a bike. But it's like, I'm not going to be able to make that happen for $400 because essentially what I'm seeing here is something grander than that. So maybe you can go back to your client and get some more money, or you can see if there's any more money in the budget, because I'm seeing something really, really good here. And I'd like to put that out there, but I can't really talk any further about it until we maybe can find a couple more bucks to throw into this thing. Another magic thing to tell people is, why is this going to cost more money? It's like, well, we're going to do a little bit more in the post-production. This money's actually not going to anything except we're going to put it on the screen. That's like a really important thing to say to people. So, does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think a lot of times I wait to hear what their number is, and then I sit down building the bid, and I'm like, I want to ask for 20% more, but I don't know if I can.
Yeah, just go and say, look, I'm running the numbers. Is there possible to bump this up 20%? Just ask them.
Before I just, send them the bid.
Yeah, just say, I'm running the numbers. It's like, is there, maybe instead of saying 20%, say, do you have any latitude on this number?
Yep.
That's the magic word. Like, do you how much latitude do you have in this? No, we're tight right here. It's like, okay, then you have to decide if you want to do it or not. But it's like, well, what do you mean latitude? It's like, well, if we shoot here instead of here, it's all employ your creative self to make this number happen. So, yeah.
When writing a bid, what do you feel the trend is about itemizing stuff?
Everything's itemized now. Everything is itemized now. There are some clients that you work with, especially in this room, you'll probably have repeat clients. They'll just want to see the categories of like, okay, this is this, and this bottom number is this.
Oh,
That's,
so you can group things.
yeah, so in my software, you can, shameless plug. My business partner will be so happy because I never talk about the software when I'm talking about the industry because I just care about this stuff. You can do an itemized version of it. You can do a category version of it where you just have the categories and the totals, or you can do a hybrid where it has the categories on top as a top sheet and then all the itemized underneath. So, yeah, this is what we're working with. So, yes?
I have a kind of a hard time between the bid and the contract. Is that two separate things, or is that now becoming?
It's the same thing. So I'm going to shoot this for this money. I'm going to deliver this stuff. In the description of the bid, it says what you're delivering. And that essentially is your contract, and these are the numbers that it's going to cost, and they sign the bottom of that thing.
So
and then,
in the bid, you include all of the contract terms on that?
you mean like the terms and conditions? Like if it's a partly cloudy Thursday, everybody gets paid. If yeah, so that you do the bid a couple times, but the final bid that's going to get signed, the one that's like, yes, that's the one. Let me send you a final bid, and then you just include the terms and conditions attached to it. So you don't want to send it to TNC every time you send it because that's just more paper. So, but the final one you want to do it. And if it's a client that you know well, and that's really not going to be an issue, you don't have to do that. Some people do TNC, some people don't. Some people are like, you must do TNC every single time, but they're the ones that have the horror story, like I didn't do this one time and I got screwed. So, it just depends.
Do you always do a bid, or do you ever prefer an estimate? It sounds like
It depends on the client. The bid is the best way to go, where I'm going to say, I'm going to do this because then you
cushion
can,
it a little.
yeah, and you can operate within it. And if you suddenly your kid's like, hey, I want to hold a light. Great, you're working for free now, kid. It's like one of those things. But the client's going to dictate. Like Susie dictated that we have to show an estimate, and we have to show support for everything we spent. So that was her recommendation, or her requirement was this is an estimate with support and proof for everything that we spent, and then the final invoice is based on the actual money spent.
Okay.
So yes, ma'am.
Do you always break out lighting even if you're using your own?
Yes, because you're renting your lighting back to the production and then charging rent for that. And from a tax situation, you're probably going to have to create a receipt from your studio to yourself or to the job. So in movie making, it's interesting. Every movie is actually a corporation. So it could be, Game of Thrones LLC or something like that. And then that becomes a company that hires the people. When I work as a director, or if I write something, like I haven't done this for a while, but when I had something called a loan out company. So the studio would hire my company to deliver me, so they would loan me out because the studio couldn't hire me directly, and then I could have a corporation to run all my expenses through. So, yes?
So getting back to the job we illustrated.
Yes.
There was a slide there where it was, well, these are the rights you say you want, but you also had a, let's do it for 2 years. And
Oh, the option
some
2?
constraints. So down from that 195, it came down to?
Right. The 195 is, so this is our first budget, was based on, that budget was based on the unlimited. So we didn't actually break out the 2-year usage on that. So there was only so much time, we weren't actually going to do this job. So, but yeah, that budget was based on the unlimited. So.
But she had told you to do it and you...
Yeah, exactly. But she said she was just trying to give me the scenarios that could possibly happen. So, yeah, that's how that worked. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, she's prettier than you. I'm so sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So if the client gives you a budget and your bid comes in under budget?
No, just if they give you a budget, just find it. No,
yeah,
find
figure it out.
find ways to
Fill it
spend
out.
money. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I recommend the $300 pizza.
Yeah.
It's very, very tasty, very tasty. The anchovies are from Spain. They're flown in every day. FedEx. Yeah, no, don't go to
Does it
the.
look cheap if you, does it look bad? if you
No,
come in
no,
here?
no. This is the thing you need to think about. This is still business, and if a client gives you a budget, oftentimes that's money that they have to spend in order to keep the client. So if they have a retainer that they've used up, you don't know what's happening. That's what I'm trying to say. Is you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And if they say, like, can you do this thing for 50 grand? And it's like, yeah, I can, I'm going to try. I'm going to see what I can do to squeeze 50 grand worth of value into this thing and get the $300 pizza. Just make it happen. But if they give you a number, you're not going to look heroic by saying, oh, I can do it cheaper.
Yeah.
You're going to look heroic for delivering. So that's my recommendation. Yes.
I'm sorry if I missed this and you already covered it, but I'm
Yeah.
finding a lot of clients, requesting, just a raw shoot, where in the past I've never, turned that over. Is that something you did cover or not?
Oh, you mean, are you turning over all the, yeah, so that's,
Library.
yeah, so we were, if I can find this really, really quickly. One of the questions, I can't find it, but anyways, one of the questions was that you want to talk to the client about is, what's your expectation for delivery? Am I giving you all the images or am I doing a rough edit on it? A lot of the more sophisticated clients and agencies, they just want everything and they're going to deal with it because they have their own workflow and how to deal with it. And frankly, I hate editing pictures because I'm miserable at it. So it's like, yeah, just take this disaster and good luck. And just, where's my check? The sooner I can get rid of it, the better. I'm not a post-production person. I know people who do post-production really well. And quite frankly, anything that I've ever done, I've always, here you go, and this is what I'm seeing for it. And then they add their little salt to it, which makes it even better. It's interesting when I talk to photographers about working with that, they look at me like I've got 3 heads I've never been like that controlling person because I come from a little bit more of a Hollywood thing where it's just everything's a collaboration and your name's on it at the end of the day. And if it's good, awesome. If it sucks, you get dragged through the mud, so whatever. Anything else? Right on, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Oh, I'll put that URL back up for y'all.